Is that
Yeah,
what?
so
Yeah,
I can
okay.
ask her, that's fine. So
Um,
shall I just explain who you are and what the Lord's been doing in your life, where you came from, how you feel about it, because it can be all a bit fast-paced, can't it? When the Lord
Yeah.
starts drawing you, it can be a bit too much sometimes, and depending on who you have around you to guide you and explain things, it can be a bit of a tricky one. And so just, explain a little bit about those things, and I can help if need be. So.
Well, my testimony, like, it just started like right at the beginning, like literally from when I was a kid. So I grew up with my mum. My mum's a Christian, but there was like our household. My parents got divorced. My mum went through a lot, and she became like quite like violent, abusive in the house. So when I was 7, like, we were separated, and that led to like a lot of like. I held like this anger that was just like, now I know that anger was like so incorrect for me to hold, but I held a lot of anger, and it ended up being when I was 14, because of like feelings of anger, rejection.
How do you know, Charlotte? He said never ask a woman how old you are, but go on, I'll ask you first.
I'm 20.
Because you look quite young as
I
well.
know,
So
yeah, I look younger than my age, yeah.
So does Ethan, actually. Yeah. So you're 20, yeah, carry on.
Yeah. But yeah, when I turned 14 on the 14th birthday, I ended up starting doing like a lot of like heavy drugs. And it started off like it didn't really start off as like what I would say like an addiction. It didn't really come from a place of like known hurt.
Yeah.
But it was more like I felt kind of rejected by people, and I wanted to fit in with what people were doing. It like where I'm from in Bolton, like drugs are really popular. So I started using drugs, and it like really quickly became like a really like deep addiction that like I would kind of do anything to fund. Like I'd like ended up taking a lot of money from my dad, and it just spiraled like really deep, like quite quickly.
On the daily, was it?
Yeah, daily, for around 5.5 years. And then it's funny because like God started work. He'd been working in my life for a long time, but when it got to when I was in about year 11, I was very, very suicidal, and I like struggled with eating. Like I would like starve myself quite a lot. It's quite emotional speaking about it, but like I did like try to kill myself like quite a few times, and then it's weird because I didn't know who God was at all. But what happened was, on the day that I tried to kill myself, a month after it, my dad was like, "Oh, I'm gonna buy you a cat." And
a cat,
yeah. It's so random. And the day my cat was born, was the day that I tried to kill myself. So that was like something that I look at as like definitely a work from God that I didn't even know about at the time. Because when I got the cat, like, not that everything changed from there, but it kind of did, because I don't really know how to explain it. But that was like really like big for me, like, and obviously like other things like I worked out in different ways, but I went through counselling. I ended up on antidepressant medication, which helped for a little bit, and so did drugs. Like I felt like drugs helped for a little bit, but it wasn't like complete. And then I ended up getting with my first boyfriend, and I ended up getting pregnant.
How old were you when you got pregnant?
I was 17, and I don't know, I just wasn't ready, like, and I don't know, like, I guess the way that that society makes it out, it isn't made out to be like a big deal, like getting rid of a baby. It's not made out to be a big deal. And like looking back on it, it was like I sacrificed that child for what I wanted, you know, like I wanted a career at the time, or I wanted a stable relationship with my dad. I didn't want to deal with the consequences of what I'd done. I didn't look at it back then. I was like that back then. I was really numb to it. So I ended up getting an abortion at 17, and then again at 18, twice in a year. Which at the time I didn't feel anything for it, like guilt or anything. Like there was like physical things that you feel like you've had a miscarriage, so you get depression. But in terms of like regretting what I'd done or guilt for what I'd done, I didn't feel anything. I just felt really numb to it. And then fast forward like a year later, I had this weird pull that I just needed to reach out to my mum. So I did. And we reconciled, and I thought that I forgive her, and that's still a process that I'm going through now, to be honest, is like fully like letting everything go. But like we met again, and we've met quite a few times. And then at the start of this year, I was still using drugs. I'd somehow, like looking back on it, was by God's grace, but I'd managed to kick like harder drugs like cocaine, cat pills. It was just weed, alcohol, cigarettes at the start of this year. And then I was speaking to this boy, and he kind of started talking to me about, it started off like we would speak about conspiracy theories, so like, which like turned out to be true, but like we talk about Freemasonry, people in positions of power that were involved in devil worship and where they got the power from. And then from realising that was true, he started to speak to me about Jesus and who God is. So I started to look into that. And then I remember like being like, yeah, like this is it, like this is what's true. So I started to read the Bible, and like probably like a really key part of my testimony is I was still using drugs. Like I was learning about God, but I was still using drugs. And I was in this weird mindset where I was like, oh well, you know, like God made weed, so like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, why would it be here if I wasn't allowed to smoke it? It's not specifically mentioned in the Bible, kind of thing. Like, what is it? Is it right? Is it wrong? Kind of thing. And I'd seen that it's wrong to be intoxicated. But it started to flip when I realised that the Greek for sorcery is pharmacia, which is to connect with a spirit through intoxication. So then things started to flip in my brain. So I remember praying, and I just asked, like, can you show me what is wrong with weed? Because I don't really understand. And literally the same night I went out and I smoked weed, and I came home and I opened the Bible to read the Bible, and it was as if like I had dyslexia, like all of the words on the pages I just couldn't read it. So I was like, okay, I can't read, so I'll try praying. And then when I tried praying, it was like this invisible like dome was like over my head, and I just couldn't like break through it. Like it was like I couldn't reach up. And then I felt like these presences around me, like these really evil presences around me in my room. And I went up to bed, and because I was just like, I thought I was tripping. Like I thought it was kind of in my head a little bit. And I went to my room, and I lay in my bed, and I closed my eyes. And then as I closed my eyes, I saw myself like
On the bed.
not even on the bed, like I could, it was like a vision, like I could see that I was falling down a really dark pit, like a really, really dark hole. And every positive feeling that I've ever experienced was gone. Like, it was like I was feeling grief, but there was nothing specific to grieve over, or I was angry, sad. Every negative feeling you could imagine, like, I was feeling them, and there was just no release from it. And I could just see myself falling further and further and further down. And then I opened my eyes and shut up. And then from that day, weed was gone, because the truth of it was revealed, that it was like connected me with the demonic. Like it just got cut off straight away. My desire for weed just went. And that was like about 7.5 months ago now. And that's been like a really, really big deal, like seeing the way that God's worked in my life that way, that it was like an addiction where I was pretty comfortable with being on drugs for the rest of my life. Like I didn't really think that it was something that I even needed to change. And there were actually times where I did try for other reasons and it just didn't work, or it worked for a few weeks and then it went back. And seeing like now that I would never go back, like that to me was the biggest confirmation for me that Jesus is the truth and who he says he is because of what he did for me. And then since then it's just been like deepening like deepening my relationship with God, understanding the Bible more, and trying to get closer and like trying to work on my relationships with people, working on anger, which I used to have a lot of, which I'm still working through it, and you know, like God's showing up for me in different ways every day, which I'm blessed about. But the drug testimony is like, when someone asks me about my testimony, like it does go there, yeah. And then the abortion thing was really brought back to my mind quite recently. I started to feel very guilty. I had names for like them, so it was Violet and Indigo were their names, and then I couldn't shake. I was seeing purple everywhere. I don't know if it was because I was noticing it, but I was seeing purple everywhere, and people kept saying different things to me. Like someone said, "Oh, if you were a flower, you'd be a violet." Just random things where I kept hearing the words over and over and over again, and it came with all this guilt, like this like really deep guilt and shame that I just couldn't get rid of it. And then like a couple of months ago, I don't really remember exactly how it went, but I was speaking to God about it, and the guilt and shame of that is just lifted and gone, through understanding like who Christ is and what he did for me. And that's what I felt was like a really big deal in baptism today, was just like that old version of me like is just dead in the water now.
Praise God.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been like really, really happy about today. So yeah, that's like my testimony.
Now it's onwards and upwards now, you know, living for the Lord. And it's a life of serving and being selfless. It's the opposite to what it was before.
Yeah.
It's not a life of perfection. You'll still mess up. But you can turn to Jesus. You can have a relationship with him now. Because he is holy. And you come in his holiness, in his righteousness, not your own. Praise God. Thanks, Charlotte, for sharing that. Sorry about the robot.